Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. We're all ready to read War and Peace now. Now, we can either do that or we can listen to books through music. I think I like the latter idea better, don't you? We appreciate you attending tonight's concert by the Jessamine Community Band, a group that started about 3 years ago with 8 people. Look at it now. It's amazing. And you're going. If we have any first-timers here tonight? Anybody for the first time? You're going to be amazed. Do we have any band members that are the first time tonight? You are going to be great. Throughout the year, we have had several concerts with several themes. Some of you may have been here when we took you around the world on a journey in different continents. The last one, of course, was July 4th. Or let's see, was that right? Yeah, July 4th. We also had one called Out of This World, some space-related stuff. Tonight, it's all about literature. And we're going to let you learn a little bit of history about some of the music that they play. We're going to start with a really, really old book. The Canterbury Tales were an anthology of 24 short stories that were written in Middle English by Geoffrey Chaucer between 1387 and 1400. Mostly in verse, they were presented as part of a fictional storytelling contest that was held by a group of pilgrims who were traveling from London to Canterbury to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket at the Canterbury Cathedral. Composer James Curnow has taken 3 of those tales and masterfully produced musical pictures of the 3 travelers. And I'll tell you about each one in between the movements. Now, this first one, he was a perfect, gentle knight. It's called The Knight's Tale. The knight was, of all the pilgrims, the truest gentleman. He had fought bravely for his king and country, both at home and abroad, and his reputation was great for modesty and courtesy and a sense of humor, as for courage on the battlefield. A Knight's Tale is one of a romantic chivalry, and we present that to you now from the Canterbury Tales, The Knight's Tale. Called The Franklin's Tale. The Franklin was a well-to-do landowner who loved the good things in life. He kept an excellent table and was known throughout the country as a most generous host whose house was always open and welcoming to both friends and neighbors. The Franklin story is one of unrequited love. Quote, "Truth is the highest thing that man may keep." Here is The Franklin's Tale. And the third movement is the Miller's Tale. Quote, "The miller is a big, strong, muscular fellow from the lower classes. But when it comes to wrestling, he's in a class of his own and always takes the prize. The miller was a big man, all brawn and bone and strong as an ox. Bit of a buffoon and a master thief when it came to stealing the grain that was brought to him to grind. His story is one of rowdy humor and intrigue. We present now the final movement in the Canterbury Tales, the Miller's Tale." Considered as one of the greatest love stories in all of literature, many composers have been inspired by Shakespeare's immortal play, Romeo and Juliet. But none as famous as the music penned by Romantic composer Peter Tchaikovsky. He composed an orchestral masterwork of sublime beauty and power with famous melodies and rich harmonies. And Mark Williams has taken great care to preserve Tchaikovsky's original music and arranged it for the modern concert band. From that story, for never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. 2025 marks the 800th anniversary of the Canticles of the Creatures. That was a great poem by St. Francis of Assisi. The purpose of a canticle is to offer a sacred song of praise. Now, St. Francis felt that he was divinely inspired to compose the Canticle of the Creatures because for him, all of creation manifests the goodness of God. The canticle is an expression of thanks for God's many gifts and a reminder of the interdependence between humans and creation. His hymn of praise recounts the journey of faith in and through the beauty and elements of creation: water, sun, wind, earth, and other natural forces. It demonstrates God's unconditional love that binds us together as brother and sister, and a reminder that we are one family under God's loving care. Now, this evening, the Jessamine Community Band will perform one of the canticles, which has been musically created by James Curnow. And the text of this canticle reads, quote, "Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces varied fruits with colored flowers and herbs." Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, composer Brian Balmages describes his composition Nevermore as a modern musical work based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, charting a man's descent into madness through unsettling piano lines and growing dissonances and eventually a chaotic eruptive sound. The piece begins with a haunting piano melody, progresses with increasing tempo and dissonance as the man's irritation grows, and explodes into a chaotic cacophony, and concludes by returning to the opening unsettling piano sounds signifying the man's breakdown. Now, in essence, the poem explores the human struggle with loss and danger of allowing sorrow to overwhelm reason, leading to the descent into an unescapable darkness. Before I quote The Raven, I want you to please join us in welcoming Dr. Mark Schnell to perform the piano accompaniment for us on this piece. He's right over there. And let's all quote The Raven together, Nevermore. There is nothing like a dream to create the future. Set in early 19th century France, Les Miserables is the story of Jean Valjean, a French peasant, and his quest for redemption after serving 19 years in jail for having stolen a loaf of bread for his sister's starving child. He decides to break his parole and start his life anew after a kindly bishop inspires him by a tremendous act of mercy. But he is relentlessly tracked down by the police inspector named Javert. And along the way, Valjean and a slew of characters are swept into a revolutionary period in France where a group of young idealists make their last stand at a street barricade. Victor Hugo's great work of literature inspired French songwriter and musical theater composer Schoenberg to take his novel, and in collaboration with lyricist Alain Bubel, he created an award-winning musical. Quote, "And remember the truth that once was spoken, to love another person is to see the face of God." As we have told you in past concerts, there are many cogs to this wheel, and we want to say some thanks at this point in time to some different organizations that helps this group. First off, a special thanks once again to the Wilmore Free Methodist Church. Isn't this a great place to have a concert? They allow us to bring this music into their beautiful sanctuary, and very gracious host. And we're sitting back there for, I guess, every time we've been here. Don Swigert, are you back there running the sound for us? Thank you, Don. He's back there in the back. Now, you have to practice a little bit to get things where you want it, and you have to have a place to do that. And this group is very fortunate in that Asbury University allows them to borrow their band room for their weekly rehearsals. Not only that, to borrow their percussion equipment. The band couldn't function without the help from them. So many thanks to Asbury University for their generosity. And let's let them know it. What you don't know is that early in the morning and late at night, this group has to transport this percussion back down to the university. Unless somebody would like to write a big check so they can buy their own, now you know where I'm going next, right? How many of you are as proud as I am that we have a group like this in Jessamine County? Well, your donations make it possible. You might look at it and say, well, that guy owns a trumpet and she has a clarinet, but they have to buy music and possibly even rights to that music. It takes a little bit of money. Now, they're in the process right now of becoming a 501(c) so that supporters can receive the tax benefits for their donations. But in the meantime, we hope that you will donate. Now, usually out in the front lobby, we have a blue bucket. We understand it's on vacation this week, and instead we have a tweed hat. And because we are celebrating literature tonight, it begs the question, oh, tweed hat, wherefore out there, oh, tweed hat? Yea, though I stand in the great entrance hall, awaiting anxiously your donations as a sweet child awaits Christmas morn. No, Shakespeare didn't write it, but I said it. And I would love for you to fill that hat up. It would help them tremendously to be able to continue to bring you free of charge this fantastic music. And I hope that you will support them in that endeavor. So, look for the hat out front. All right. We move on now. There is a piece of literature that says this: it's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. Johann de Meye's First Symphony, The Lord of the Rings, based on the famous trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien, has established itself as a classic piece in the concert band repertoire. After close consultation with the composer, Paul Lavender has masterfully adapted and condensed 3 of the original 5 movements into a practical concert version. The movements are Gandalf, Shadowfax, and Lothlorien. Not all those who wander are lost. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lord of the Rings. Ladies and gentlemen, the Jessamine Community Band under the direction of Tim Johnson. And we would like to remind you, their next concert is Monday, December the 15th. Going to be here. West High School. It'll be their Christmas concert, free of charge, Monday, the 15th of December. Until then, thank you so much for coming. We hope to see you. Give it up again, the Jessamine Community Band.